Basically,
did I say you could smoke? Seriously, are we doing that again? I told you before. For goodness sake, I'm just glad they've got the windows open.
If you were the BMW driver that I knew, how many years ago? 25-ish years ago.
Oh man, seriously, that way. Oh man, that is nasty stuff. What is that?
This is basically a cinnamon infused.
It looks like you hand rolled that this morning.
No. It's got the plastic tip on it. But this is a hell of a cigar, primarily because it has got flavor, it's got gusto, it's got balls. On that topic, why are you driving around in this car at a sedentary pace? That's a BMW drive. That's a BMW drive. That's a BMW drive.
Because there's nutters out on the road now. Nutters, that's the problem.
So can I ask you a question?
Oh man, seriously.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Wallahi,
yani.
So can I ask you a question? This is the part. So the part that's bothering me is that now I've driven around in this. What is this? Remind me what this is. This BCG, ECG, EFG, ABCD, hashtag
BCG BMW E30. This is the second coming of the E30. So as you said, I used to own an E30 in the late 90s.
I didn't say that.
You just mentioned earlier. It's 25 years ago.
Off camera, I might have said.
No, you said it on camera. 25 years ago. So then I had a 325 ISC. This is also a 325 ISC.
Right. My recollection of you is when you drove a BMW that you owned during, in my opinion, the height of BMW's bad boy image. I have seen you take off from roughly outside of this house, wearing a black leather jacket, wheels screeching, rubber going all over the road, pulling out right in front of someone who was driving very pleasantly, telling them
I didn't pull out in front of anybody.
I'm finished here.
I didn't pull out in front of anybody. I never pulled out.
Telling them to sod off, driving 1 foot behind people on the motorway who are already going 85 miles per hour. You're flashing them to move over. And now you've gone to
none of this is admissible in court, by the way. That's 25 years ago.
I haven't finished yet. Now you're giving space to people. You're waiting for old ladies to cross the road.
Yes.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah,
what size jar are they in at home? What size? I bet you it's a tiny jar. They must be big by now.
Dude, that was 25 years ago.
Dude, you're not 20 years old.
If you're talking about 25 years ago, that was 25 years ago. This is now. We are older, wiser.
You may be.
Gentlemen, that's what we are.
No, but I frankly don't get it. I think the spirit of driving cars like this has vanished.
Oh, no.
I think enthusiasts of your age who really valued and treasured cars like this, yeah, if you can't relive those moments, who the hell can? Who's going to?
Who's telling you I don't?
Well, I haven't seen you do it.
I don't do it in front of people.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah.
What, in your solitary moments? So this is what I've seen. I've seen you thrash it down some back street, yeah, but on the motorway you're driving at 61.5 miles per hour.
Driving fast on motorways is not exciting.
The days
it's not exciting.
The days have gone.
This is the thing. It's like this is, you know, apart from the fact that we're older, wiser, smarter, just more gentle, you know, the reality is that because of how fortunate I've been in driving the cars that I've driven, where I've driven them, how I've driven them, to an extent, you know, I've done all that stuff. I've done all that for high speeds on motorways and things like that. I've done that.
Why don't you just?
So to me, it's like,
why don't you just end it now?
No, because that's not where it's exciting. Where it's exciting is getting that gear change right, is getting that corner right, and that's doing it on B roads, that's doing it in back roads, and that's usually doing it when I'm on my own. And not necessarily going very fast, no, absolutely. But it's not about going fast anymore.
To some
and this
extent,
is the thing, it's like when you're younger, it's like you need to be everywhere really quickly.
No.
Right? Now, I'm like, I just want to enjoy the moment.
So BMW, as far as, okay, I was always into Mercedes for all sorts of reasons, not one reason, not two, many reasons. I was always into Mercedes. Mercedes had that sort of
family tradition as well.
It was maybe a family tradition, but it was the well-built, even then, I mean, then it was an exotic car.
Well, it's prestigious.
In a world that existed in the late 70s and early 80s, that was an exotic,
the choice of
well-made
everywhere, which I'm sure appealed to you.
And it had a bad boy, but a refined bad boy element.
It had a dictator image. Let's be honest.
It was basically, in a world of bad boy cars, it was the Scaramanga, it was the Bond villain of cars, right? And BMW was the drug dealer car to some extent.
Oh no, man! I wouldn't call it a drug dealer car. It was the ultimate driving machine. It was all about the driving experience. It was all about the fact that you could drive it.
Yes, and actually, the one beautiful thing you said just now, which I think a lot of people have forgotten about BMWs, they were always branded ultimate driving machine. I think even in your recent posts, even I was tagging them ultimate driving machine.
Which I think that for this generation of BMW is particularly true.
So, can I take you back to a time, and we've got a Saab standing a couple of cars away from us. Cars in the sort of like late 80s, early 90s, if they were drivers' cars, and that was a term then, you thought of BMW and Saab, and they always went on about how ergonomic they were. And for the driver, the dashboard was laid out around the driver.
Look at this right now. Case in point. And this at the time was the height of ergonomics. I wouldn't say that today, because I think that there's a couple of issues with it today.
I'm as a passenger.
But at the time, this was the height of ergonomics. And if you look at the fact how that console,
the layout,
the center console is actually tilted towards the driver.
I'm the passenger. And I do not have a full view of any of the basic. But I have to come into the driver's.
You're kind of excluded.
Lean into the driver's position to see. I'm excluded, and it's obvious that I'm excluded.
Now, by today's standards, I got to say the steering is off center. Right, sometimes you can't see the fuel gauge, so it's not perfect ergonomics. The instrument panel doesn't sit in the center of the top part of the steering wheel as it would today. But having said that, look at the hand position. Look at the way they've done the steering wheel. Look where the thumbs are supposed to sit. Look at the pedals, the floor hinged accelerator pedal. Look at the fact that with the brake pedal and the accelerator, it's so easy to heel and toe this thing. Look at this.
So, if you were driving this car 25 to 30 years ago,
which I was,
and your wife, girlfriend, partner, whoever it is, sitting next to you, there's an obvious statement this car is making to the passenger, saying, shut up, enjoy the drive, stop telling me where to go. Right? Now, if I said that today, which I am saying today, that would be considered, it would be considered ancient thinking. But actually, in terms of driver experience, what it said is, leave me alone, I'm going to propel this machine in any way I want.
Yes.
And that gave people who were really into cars of a certain age at that time all license to drive the way they wanted to.
But two things have happened.
Pre-speed cameras.
There you go. That was going to be one of them.
Pre-speed cameras, because my recollection is speed cameras in London specifically, and I remember getting caught by a speed camera, static speed. In fact, there was about a year just before static speed cameras came out that you had mobile speed traps. That's my recollection, and my recollection was about a year into me having a driving license. I got my driving license in summer 1990, and by summer 91 there were static police traps everywhere. And I think by 92 there were.
Well, look at it this way. Before this car, for example, I used to have a Toyota Supra, right? An 84 Supra, Celica Supra.
No, I'm talking about real cars.
No, it's a real car. It's a great car.
But it was Japanese.
2.8 straight. Let's not go there. That's another video. But I had this car. I lived in Islington. I lived in central London, right? Now, during that time, we had Sunday trading laws. Okay, so everything was closed on Sunday, right? And there were no cameras around there. There was, I think, one camera that was in Moorgate, the City of London area, because it had, obviously, they had the.
What year
attacks.
again? Remind me of the year.
This will be early 90s.
Okay.
So my Sunday morning blast in that Supra would be around town.
And you could do it.
And you could do it.
Right.
Like I knew the back roads around Shoreditch and the West End and around Islington and Old Street and Barbican, and that's why I used to drive, you know. Now I don't even drive into London, and I hate driving into London.
And how congested was London at that time?
Well, on Sunday morning it wasn't. It was reasonably congested outside of those times, but you know, at that point in time it wasn't. It was fine.
So if you look around, just
and here's the other thing. So here's the other thing I remember very clearly, because I used to do a newspaper run from Scrubs Lane into central London, where I used to get bromides done, and then go over to East London because the printer was in Bow. Now, when I used to come off the Western Avenue up to about King's Cross, there's a series of traffic lights down there, right? If you hit the first traffic light at the right time, at the right speed, you could get all of them on green.
Yeah.
And you weren't necessarily going well over the speed limit, but you were certainly keeping a pace up, you know, in order to do that. And I remember distinctly when Ken Livingstone became the Mayor of London, he's deliberately staggered the lights in London so that would never be possible. But at the time, that was the joy of getting that entire stream of lights on green all the way down. Right. And at the end of it, you'd be like, yes, done it. You know? But this is not possible now.
No, undoubtedly, London was, I remember it when London was a driver's city. You could go late, not necessarily even late in the evening. You could go into central London, you could skim around Hyde Park, you could cut through, you could literally cut through places and enjoy cutting through places.
Yeah. You know that's all 20 now. Everywhere in central London is 20 miles per hour.
Right.
Draconian 20 miles per hour.
So now that we are living in Nazi London, now that is the case, how do you keep your
go out of town. You go out of town.
No, but I personally think, and this is the point I've been making to you, you're sitting in a time machine right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And regardless of what's happening around you, this is your time machine. And this car doesn't have the performance of cars today.
And that's a very good point. You see, and there you've actually kind of hit the nail on the head.
Say that one more time. I love hearing that.
You do, I know you do. But listen, this car, even back in the day, had a 0 to 62 miles per hour time of about 7.8 seconds or something like that. By today's standards, that's slow. Back then, that was fast, that was powerful. It's got 170 horsepower. These days, we complain when we have a Toyota GR86 with 200 horsepower, like, oh, it doesn't go enough horsepower. This thing only had 170 horsepower. Today, 33 years on, it's probably lost a few of those horsepowers. I reckon 0 to 60, I haven't timed it, but I reckon I'd be lucky if it was 8 seconds or 8.5 seconds. So it's not really that fast, let's be honest. But the sensation of driving it, the way that the torque comes along, the way that when you get the gear change right, the way that when you get the revs right and the torque comes on, that sensation, that feeling that you get is still there, but it's happening at a much slower level now. So in a sense, you're still getting all the sensations and the fun of driving it, but you're not actually going that fast.
But you're not wearing a stupid black jacket or a leather jacket and a stupid cap that says BMW or Alpine.
No, I don't do that. I got BCG cap now. I don't do the black leather jacket thing anymore.
It's the BCG cap that I think I'm objecting to. I think
that's what it's going to come round to.
I think this video is not about.
It's about the BMW. It's about the hat.
It's about the hat because the hat.
No, the black leather jacket thing. You remember when I used to have that?
The black leather jacket.
The black leather jacket thing. It was a full length one. You remember?
No one can see that on the video. What you're doing?
I know. It was a full length one.
What do you mean 3/4? You mean 3/4 inch?
Yeah.
You mean Carlito's way?
What do you call it? About thigh level, right?
Yeah, Carlito's way.
So, no, to me it was Shaft. It was Shaft. You know, the character Shaft. It was that sort of thing. It was like, you know, trying to be cool and badass and all of this sort of stuff, which I wasn't. I wasn't any of those things ever. Let's be honest.
But the badass boys used to drive in Opel Mentras, if you recall.
Yeah, but those were the pretend wannabes.
They were quite
the
cool.
real guys had the BMWs.
That's true. BMW was. I think you made it.
But even before the BMW, even the Supra, and I've said this on record before, even the Supra got me into that.
No, but we're talking about proper cars.
No, even the Supra because the Supra was such a cool looking thing and it was so unique that suddenly I started, you know, and I've said this before, I think I started to give a little bit more attention to my appearance because of the car, which is kind of weird, right? As the car starts to dictate
and yet,
how you present yourself.
And yet, in this day and age,
you're saying I've just turned 54. No, I've just turned 54, and I'm like, you know what? I am what I am, you know.
Well, you could be, but the thing is this: I think this car has enough of a personality, and
exactly,
I
it's got
do
enough
agree.
for both of us. Yeah.
It's got a personality, which I'm honestly. We were talking earlier and off camera, I guess. I used to be a die-hard Mercedes person
Yeah.
for all sorts of reasons. They've got no personality, just products. They're not
Yeah.
cars anymore, right? This car still...
Would you
I
buy
can't-
one today? Because
No.
you had one recently.
Absolutely not. Wouldn't touch them because it's just not interesting.
Yeah.
There's nothing interesting about Mercedes.
But hang on, but as long as I've known you, you've always had a Mercedes.
Yeah, but they're not interesting. There's nothing interesting about having a Mercedes now.
staggering.
And the culture, there's a culture shift.
Lifelong Mercedes owner. Your dad had a Mercedes. You've always had Mercs in the family. What's happened?
There's nothing interesting. Look at, there's no end of Mercedes. Now, one thing that I actually quite like, and I always wished Mercedes would do this, but they've taken it too far, is I thought they should have a car that virtually anyone at any level could buy. And they used to do, what they used to have is, at the very least in my ancient memory, they had 3 cars. They would have a C-Class, an E-Class and an S-Class. And then every car you could get in 5 or 6 different engine sizes.
Yeah.
And what made it really special was if AMG came along and
Yeah.
put their hand-built engine in.
Exactly. That's
And
when
then-
that's when AMG was more than just, you know, skirts and a spoiler. It was actually engineering.
It was engineering,
Yeah.
and that's what Mercedes bought
Yeah.
from AMG. They
Yeah.
bought some sort of something bespoke,
But you know,
something ultra special.
but I'm with you on the way that they've, you know, got all of these new models. You know, even for me as a car journalist, it gets so confusing because now they've got the EQ range, and the EQ range
I've only recently worked out what the EQ, how the EQ range is named. I've only recently worked that
I
out.
still have, you can enlighten me.
So EQS
is the S class.
is the S class.
I know. But however, now they've got EQS, and I thought I'd figured that out. I thought I'd figured it out until they went EQS SUV. I'm like, what? What? The EQS SUV is not called, like for example in the regular models they call them, what they call them, the MLs or whatever now. I don't know what they call them anymore.
Okay.
But they always had separate designation for the saloons and the SUVs. But now for the electric cars, they have the saloons and then they have the SUVs, and they've just called them SUVs. Have they just run out of creativity?
So, how long have you been a motoring journalist?
30 plus years.
30 plus years, and you don't really test drive Mercedes. Not that I've seen you test drive a Mercedes. I think the last one I saw you drive was the
EQS, yeah.
Was the, which
Yeah.
is not, which is
It was okay. It was.
you take the
yeah.
Mercedes badge off,
Yeah.
it could be anything. To be really very
Well, no,
honest with you.
it is quite a unique new electric car. The interior is pretty unique on it.
Fine.
It's impressive, but I didn't fall in love with it.
I wouldn't.
But I was impressed by
I
it.
wouldn't expect Mercedes to make something that's not impressive
Yeah.
on some level. And by the way, I've been waxing lyrical to you forever about the S-Class. I always thought S-Class was a car anyone could have. You don't have to have a new one, you can have an old one. And it's probably the best engineered car and the best value car in the world, to be really very honest with you, yeah? But you don't test drive Mercedes cars because, personally, my opinion is there's nothing really for you to test drive and say this is a stunning new car design or it really has taken the market by storm. I don't see any of that like even their new SL model.
I would test them because, as you know, I test every car. So it's not. I don't restrict what I'm doing on the basis of that. You know, it's just whatever opportunities come my way, I will review those cars. So when I do the opportunity to review the EQS, I did. But I also kind of understand what you're saying, but I'm still slightly astonished, baffled even, that, you know, like I said, lifelong Mercedes owner. There's always been a Mercedes in your
I
family.
can walk past,
and right now in your drive there is no Mercedes.
I used to be able to walk past a Mercedes showroom and I would stop and look at least 3 or 4 cars, and looking at 3 or 4 cars made me look at another 3 or 4 cars, and I would then maybe walk in, and I now walk past Mercedes showrooms.
So okay, so tell me,
because there is absolutely nothing of that. Mercedes salesmanship is absolutely third rate. You could put anyone in that showroom and they would sell the same number of cars. The cars sell themselves. I've always understood that about Mercedes. Their staff is incompetent as salesmen. They're probably very good as managers. So I don't rate Mercedes from that perspective. The excitement of buying a car...
But it's not the customer experience that's putting you off. It's more than that.
But the customer experience is what makes the difference in this day and age. When everything is same, the customer experience... The customer experience is not only is the thing that excites you about something in the first place. A little bit of knowledge about a car or a little bit of showmanship about the car can make the tipping point between you being apathetic or being utterly involved. I'm utterly apathetic when it comes to most cars now.
Okay, so tell me this then. What brand has got your fancy now?
Porsche.
Porsche. Interesting.
Ferrari for all sorts of other reasons, because the ethos of Ferrari is something I absolutely buy into, and it's like one man who wanted basically to go around corners with a smile on his face, and selling cars was not his thing. Selling his cars was about maintaining his...
It was funding the racing, let's be honest.
Enthusiasm.
Selling the road cars was to fund the racing.
And even that's gone awry to some extent, but I get that they've stayed much closer to that vision than other manufacturers have. Porsche, I like the fact that there is a continued heritage in the way these cars look. I mean, I'm talking about 911 specifically, very specifically. There's a new one that's come out, the Porsche Dakar.
The Dakar, 911 Dakar, yeah.
And this, to me, someone who's not into his SUVs, and I don't buy into the SUV concept at all, right? But there's a car, and the roads in London are atrocious.
They are indeed, yeah.
They're not as good.
You had an experience with your SL, I think, didn't you?
Yep.
Messed up a couple of wheels, didn't you?
Potholed it, flattened, thankfully didn't screw up the actual wheels.
Right.
The tire went instantly. But for the atrocious roads that you have in London, and I guess the world is going to pot. It's sort of reset to the 70s economically and in terms of, I mean...
So why don't you do this? Since you're waxing lyrical about the older modes, why don't you do this? Why don't you get yourself an 80s mode?
I did think about it, but that is a sort of an enthusiast way of going it, and I'm also trying to think like a modern person in today's day and age. What modern car is a suitable car? And I'm very hard pressed to find something that doesn't look oval shaped or
well, you better hurry with the Porsches. They're only making 2,500 of those.
And I suspect that's marketing. I suspect
they're probably old spoken for.
I suspect that is a type of car that is going to be more and more available, which is not quite an SUV. It's not quite a, your standard road sports car. It's somewhere in the middle. It has, I mean, Lamborghini are doing that with the Huracan, or have done it with the Huracan, slightly more extreme versions of cars, and I actually think that is the niche that I like and I'm attracted to, because it's very practical.
Rugged supercar.
The rugged supercar, which is both practical but fast and can be used in a multitude of ways. That's the thing I'm gravitating.
But here's what I think will be the sad thing about that car and the Huracan. Maybe less so with the Huracan. Because the people that buy these cars, whenever Porsche announces a limited edition of a 911, the first people that buy them are speculators. And the first thing they do is they buy them and they put them away. Now, you just talked about the fact that could be your first practical 911, which you can just use and abuse as you like. And unfortunately, I think a lot of them are just going to end up in collections. I don't think they're going to be driven the way that they're intended to be driven. The way that they have tested them over 10,000 kilometers, I don't think that they'll ever be driven. They will in the Middle East, I'm sure a few guys will buy them and they will take them into the dunes. I think that will happen. But I think in the rest of the world, I think they'll just be tucked away in collections.
But what you're saying is pretty par for the course when it comes to most cars. Most cars are test driven by motoring journalists to an extreme level, and they're never ever used.
Exactly.
And then they're never used at that level on a day-to-day basis.
I agree with you.
What's the point of thrashing?
I remember when the Aventador first came out, and I did the launch in Rome, and we went to the Vallelunga circuit, and we drove these big brand new Aventadors basically as hard as I was capable of driving them, and I remember driving it and thinking, no owner's ever going to drive this car this way.
Well, you rarely get to those speeds doing circuits around Harrods. It doesn't happen, and that's the practicality of it. So no, but this kind of car, coming back to this kind of car, you're well within its capability and your capability. Even when you push it, you should still be reviving the spirit of this car where you can, when you can.
Where I can, when I can.
And my suggestion,
not to confirm or deny anything on camera.
Closing suggestion is take them back out the jar, sew them back on, and take them out for a run once in a while.
We'll go and smoke a cigar.
Over and out.
Would love to hear your comments. Do let us know what you think of what he's saying and what I'm saying.
What, that you're castrated?
I just gotta say it. Okay, it's time for you to go now.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these 3 little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.